After dinner, all four of them went to sleep quickly because they had to wake up after 3 hours. The time was 12 o'clock. Each of them quietly moved toward the wash basin in their respective rooms. Then they slowly pulled the pipe beneath it. After pulling the pipe out, they gently tapped on the wall behind it and then began loosening it piece by piece. It wasn't actually a real wall. Cardboard had been pasted in a way that made it look like one. They completely removed it. There was enough space for a person to pass through. One by one, they began slipping out through their rooms. Thus, 3 of them managed to come outside the cell. They waited for the 4th man to arrive. Even after half an hour, he did not appear. So they decided to carry out their plan even without the 4th man. According to their plan, they grabbed onto a side pipe and began climbing up. They climbed upward without making the slightest sound. After a while, they reached a small workshop. From there, they picked up a sheet they had prepared and started moving again. Soon, they reached the top of the building. They had now arrived above the kitchen area. Once on top, they began crawling. Slowly, they reached the far end of the kitchen. From there, they had to climb down through a pipe. The first man went down, the second man went down, and just as the third man started climbing down, it happened. The pipe right next to them snapped and fell down. Hearing the sound, the prison guards were startled. The noise had come from the kitchen area. Maybe it was just that troublesome cat that often caused problems there. They decided to stay put, thinking they would check only if they heard another sound. At the same time, in the kitchen area, one man was still above, while the other 2 lay below. They remained like that for half an hour. When they were sure that no guards were coming, they decided to move forward. The third man then began climbing down through the pipe. Now all 3 of them had reached the ground. They began crawling again. After about 15 minutes, they reached a wire fence. It was at least 10 feet high. Slowly and carefully, they began crossing the fence. All 3 of them managed to get past it. They crawled again. After another 10 minutes, there was yet another wire fence. They crossed that one as well. Now their destination was the seashore. They continued crawling. After some time, they reached the beach. As soon as they arrived, they took out the sheet they had brought with them. Another man took out a special device that looked like an air pump. Using that device, they began pumping air into the sheet. The sheet started expanding. Slowly, it turned into a large raft, big enough for 4 people to sit comfortably. They climbed onto the raft and little by little disappeared into the sea. Alcatraz Island, located in San Francisco. This island is home to one of the most famous prisons in the world. The main reason for its fame was its security. Built like a fortress atop a 22-acre rocky island, Alcatraz lies about 2.5 kilometers away from the San Francisco shoreline. Escaping from this prison was considered impossible. That is precisely why the most dangerous criminals in the country were kept here. For anyone to escape from this prison, they would have to first get out of their cell, then escape the cell block. After that, they would need to get out of the building without being caught in the beam of the lighthouse, and finally overcome the freezing waters and the powerful ocean currents surrounding the island. A prison escape here was thought to be impossible. Not a single person had ever succeeded in escaping. Alcatraz was regarded as a prison of pride for America. But that pride didn't last very long. 3 men, John Anglin, Clarence Anglin, Frank Morris. How did they manage to escape from this prison? What was their master plan? And more importantly, did they truly succeed in escaping? The day after the prison escape, a guard reported that 3 inmates were missing when it was time for breakfast. Immediately, the guards began checking all the cells. All 3 men were still inside their cells. It appeared as though they were sleeping, but no matter how many times the guard called out to them, none of the 3 responded. Sensing that something was wrong, the guards opened the cell. The guard then tried to wake them by touching them, and the moment he did, he froze in shock. Their faces were horrifying because they were not human faces. All 3 were artificial dummy heads. As soon as the truth was discovered, other guards rushed to the spot. Everyone was stunned. The authorities immediately informed the mainland. The FBI was alerted. For them, this was unbelievable news. Under no circumstances should criminals be able to escape from here. The main reason was the powerful currents in that part of the Pacific Ocean. Because of the strength of the waves, no kind of raft could survive there. Moreover, the water temperature was only about 5 degrees Celsius. Swimming to safety was virtually impossible. The FBI was convinced that the prisoners could not have escaped the island alive. Soon, the FBI arrived on the island. They immediately began searching the shorelines. It was an intense investigation, but they found no evidence along the beaches of the island. However, they did find something, not on land, but in the sea. About 200 meters away from the island, it was the raft used by the prisoners. This confirmed that the escapees had managed to reach at least that far. From there, only 2 possibilities remained. Either the prisoners abandoned the raft after reaching that point, or they were killed by the ocean itself. The FBI intensified the search. They began examining the prisoners' cells. That's when they discovered the tunnels. After that, every cell in the prison was inspected, and then they found it. The same tunnel that existed in the 3 cells was also present in another one. It was the cell of a man named Alan West. Alan West was immediately arrested. The FBI began interrogating him, and it was through that interrogation that they finally began to understand how all of this had started.
December 1962. That was when the 4 of us began planning all of this. We had become friends earlier in another prison. The first step of the plan was to dig through the wall. For that, the first method we chose was stealing steel spoons from the prison mess hall. Using those spoons, we began digging into the wall. Days passed, weeks passed, but the progress was painfully slow. We realized that if we continued this way, escaping within the time we had planned would be impossible. So we began thinking of another solution. That was when the prison workshop came to our minds. We started stealing small, sharp pieces of metal from the workshop. From then on, we used those tools for digging. The debris from the digging was disposed of every day, each time in different places. Days passed like this, but even then, the results were not significant. It was during this time that Morris noticed a vacuum cleaner in the workshop. Slowly, he dismantled its motor and secretly brought it back to the cell. After that, he began modifying the motor. Eventually, he converted it into a machine that could be used as a drill. All of this happening inside a high-security prison cell. We decided to use the drill for digging, but that's when another serious problem arose. The noise. The sound of drilling could not be allowed to reach outside. To overcome this, we came up with another idea. Every day, the prison had 1 hour of music hour. During that time, inmates were allowed to sing as loudly as they wanted. If they had musical instruments, they could play them too. Morris had an accordion, so during every music hour, we deliberately created as much noise as possible. And under the cover of that sound, we continued drilling. After nearly 6 months of effort, the tunnels in all 4 of our cells were finally complete. We decided to escape on a particular night. All 4 of us crawled through the tunnels and reached the back side of the building. Very close to this building, there was another structure. The space between them was an area the guards rarely paid attention to. Using that neglected space, we set up a small workshop. From there, we crawled and slowly made our way to the top of the building. But what we saw once we reached the top was shocking. The prison was surrounded by watchtowers. Every tower had armed guards. That was when we realized escaping the prison itself would not be easy. And even if we did escape, swimming across the sea was impossible. The waves there were extremely powerful. So that same night, all 4 of us returned to our cells. After that, our next idea was to steal a raft. We searched everywhere, but no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't find even a single raft. That's when Morris came up with an idea.
Why don't we make one ourselves?
But how?
The prison issued inmates a type of raincoat during the rainy season. It was made of rubber. Slowly and secretly, we began stealing these raincoats from different prisoners. We brought all the collected raincoats to our workshop. Then we started stitching them together, one after another. Piece by piece, they turned into a large raft. But since it was stitched together, we worried that water might leak in. That's when we noticed something, the hot exhaust pipe coming out of the kitchen. We pressed the stitched sections of the raft against the pipe for some time. Because of the heat, the rubber slowly melted and sealed itself. All the holes in the raft were completely sealed. The raft was ready. To inflate it, we decided to use Morris's musical instrument, the accordion. And so we chose the night of June 11th for our escape. That night, we went to sleep unusually early. At midnight, we woke up. Before leaving, there was one more thing to do. We had made artificial dummy heads inside the prison. We placed them carefully on our beds. According to the plan, we were supposed to reach the other side of the tunnel by 12:30. But that's when it happened. I couldn't open the grill covering the tunnel in my cell. It took me half an hour to force it open. Meanwhile, the others continued moving according to the plan. After some time, I finally came up through the tunnel. But by the time I reached the top, they were already gone.
Perhaps because he cooperated fully during the interrogation, Alan West was not punished severely by the FBI. The search for the escapees continued. The entire sea area was combed thoroughly, but not even the smallest piece of evidence was found. Eventually, the FBI arrived at a conclusion. The prisoners who escaped did not reach land. They drowned in the sea. However, many people strongly opposed this conclusion. The press and media stood against the FBI. There was even talk that the FBI had taken this stance only to protect the image of America's most prestigious prison. As the situation began to worsen, the FBI restarted the search. Days passed. About a month later, a body was recovered from the sea. but the body had not decomposed at all. Further examination revealed that it did not belong to any of the escapees. The investigation continued. Months passed. Years passed. Finally, after 17 years, in 1979, the FBI closed the case due to lack of evidence. Years went by. San Francisco, 2013. The FBI received an anonymous letter. The letter claimed to be written by John Anglin. It said,
Clarence Anglin died a few years ago. Morris is also dead. I am now 81 years old. I am suffering from cancer. I want to surrender to the police, but I have two conditions. First, you must announce live on television that I will be imprisoned for only 1 year. Second, I must be given proper medical treatment for my cancer.
The FBI did not make this letter public. It was only 4 years later that the FBI revealed it. By then, there was no information available about the person who had written the letter. Years passed again. Then, another piece of news emerged. Reports claimed that two men running a farm in Brazil bore a striking resemblance to the Alcatraz escapees. As soon as this information surfaced, a U.S. Marshal was sent there. He went undercover. He reached the location and began investigating. But what he found was that the two men had left the place 2 years earlier. However, he managed to collect their photographs. Years later, in January 2020, another revelation shook the case. The photographs collected from Brazil were compared with the prisoner's original prison photographs using artificial intelligence. The result was shocking. Both sets of photographs matched. They were the same people. After decades, the truth finally emerged. The men who escaped from Alcatraz had not died. They were the ones who had been running a farm in Brazil. The news stunned America. For the first time in history, Alcatraz was defeated.